Hello, everybody. Charles from GMAT Ninja here. Welcome to episode number 5 of our Ask Me Anything About the GMAT series. Today is the video on hard quant and quant time management. So a lot of the time in these videos, I say, don't worry, I'm not going to melt your face off. Today, I'm going to try to melt your face off. But what does that mean exactly? So thinking about what hard questions mean, what sorts of things cause trouble when you're struggling with hard questions, it's not so much that the math itself is so hard. Like if you have shaky math skills, you're not very good at algebra, obviously you're gonna have trouble on this test, but they can only make the algebra so hard. So what does a hard question mean on the GMAT? What are the skills you need to get to an elite quant level? A lot of it is more about kind of putting together different kinds of concepts. So people ask, well, let's talk about what people ask. Here you go. Frequently asked questions we get about GMAT Quant at the high level, questions you guys have asked on the forum. So these will kind of frame what we do in this hour today. So hey, I'm kind of stuck around 80-ish on quant. How do I get to the mid 80s or the high 80s? How does that happen? If I'm doing well on quant, am I going to see more hard topics, probability combinatorics, and so on? Are certain topics always hard? Then we'll talk about time management and just in general, how to get better at this stuff. So here's how this video is going to work. I'll shrink this down a little bit for now. I'll give you a little bit of the high level, talking about, so what is it exactly that is the difference between 80 on GMAT Quant and 85. We'll talk about that kind of at a high level. Talk about what topics have to do with it and what topics do not have to do with your score, really. So how are those things related? Should you kind of go into certain topics more if you're looking for a really elite score? Then we'll talk about time management. And then we'll finish up. I've got a bunch of questions picked out that are kind of combining different things. So some of you are not great at algebra. That's not what this video is for. Some of you are not great at probability or number properties or whatever. In this video, as I go through the tougher questions, I'm going to assume that you have all of those basics pretty much mastered. And I'm going to give you questions that kind of force you to think a little bit differently. So some of the hardest GMAT questions, most of the hardest GMAT questions, it's putting together different things. So it might be topic-wise, hey, here's probability and number properties combined together, and it's really unnatural to think that way. Or, well, hey, here's some algebra and here's some logic, and it's really unnatural for most people to go back and forth. So it's kind of using different parts of your brain all at the same time. That's what hard questions look like. So that's what we're going to go through towards the end. I've got about 5 examples picked out that I really like. We'll get through as many as we can in the hour. Okay, talking about this general idea of, hey, I'm stuck around an 80. What does it take to get to 83, 85, beyond that? What does that mean really on this version of the GMAT? Couple thoughts here. Number one, the way the current GMAT is scored, and we're filming this in 2026 in case you're watching this later, the way the GMAT score scale works on quant, they kind of said, hey, we want to sort of stretch out the score scale. And I won't get too much into the nitty gritty of what exactly the folks at GMAT did to make that happen. But what's kind of disturbing, thank you so much for the kind comments, you guys. And again, if you're watching this live, we're filming this live. So if you want to see a middle-aged guy say goofy things about the GMAT, keep watching, because I don't know what's coming out of my mouth. But if you are watching it live and you have questions, please let us know. Please harass me. I love it. Thank you, guys. Inflating my head. But seriously, guys, watching live, ask questions, give feedback, harass me. It makes the video better for everybody watching later, too. All right. So one of the problems that I think happens high level on the GMAT is on GMAT Quant is 80 is a really, really, really good score. We see people all the time who are fantastic at quant, and they kind of get stuck around an 80. It is really hard to get higher than that. So there was somebody I was interacting with on the forum, only 2 errors, got an 83. So sometimes your margin for error is just really slim as you progress through the 80s. Just more importantly, yeah, you don't have to have any big weaknesses at all to be stuck in an 80. 80 is really, really good. One of the things I recommend watching to understand scoring on GMAT Quant, we have a video that we did in conjunction with GMAT, the creators of the test. Title is something like, oh, what is a bad GMAT Quant score? Is 80 bad? 80 is not bad. But we talk about sort of how that score scale works and the relationship or the lack of relationship between the number of errors and the score. So you can miss a whole bunch and get an 82 or an 83. You can miss very, very few and get an 82 or an 83. What's my point? Really, the bottom line is it's hard. It gets really hard up there. And you can't make any careless errors. You've got to manage your time perfectly. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then if you really want to push forward, you've got to get really good at some of these questions that combine different concepts. It is really, really tough. And one of the things that I think happens psychologically, you might feel like you're better at quant than verbal, and your verbal score is higher. We see that all the time. A lot of that is just baked into the way the test is scaled. So if you're at an 80 and you're hitting a ceiling, there's no shame in that. That can be a really, really strong score. Getting higher than that, you need pinpoint execution, no careless errors at all. Don't miss anything you know how to do. Great time management. And then again, pushing your ceiling up is a really challenging thing. And often it is that ability to think flexibly, think in different ways, which is what we'll focus on later in this video. All right, questions 2 and 3 here. One of the big myths around the GMAT, and it's been there for as long as I can remember, and I've been teaching for 25, 26 years now, is this idea that certain question types are inherently hard. That is just not the case. So people kind of dismiss, oh, well, algebra, yeah, I was doing algebra in grade 9 or grade 7 or whatever. Algebra's easy. We can write algebra questions or algebra-looking questions that maybe combine some logical element or whatever, and it'll melt your face off. And you can be amazing at algebra and miss these questions, and the question is hard. I'll give you a couple of those today that kind of have a little element of that. There are questions that people go, well, probability, combinatorics, those are hard. I can give you a really easy probability question or a really easy combinatorics question. Bottom line here, the questions that we get asked a lot, hey, which question types are hard? There's no such thing. I don't want you thinking that way because there's just nothing there. So any topic can be made incredibly hard. That's one of the things that, whatever you might think of the people who create this test, one of the things they're really skilled at is taking anything, even the most basic thing, algebra, arithmetic, percentages, which are about 60% of the quant content. They can make it easy, they can make it medium difficulty, and they can make it really, really freaking hard. And I'll show you some of those today. And something that's a little more exotic, probability, about 2% of questions, combinations, permutations, 2-3% of questions total. Yeah, we can make those really hard. We can make them really easy. So don't make the mistake of thinking hard is equated to some certain types of questions. It isn't. Anything can be hard. Anything can be easy. If you're really looking for that elite score, get great at everything and get great at being flexible, which again is what we're going to kind of play with today on the tough questions. All right, time management. Go ahead and remove this from the screen here. Time management. I'm going to assume here that everybody watching this, if you're watching a video on high-level quant, I'm going to assume that you are, or at least you're working hard to soon be very capable at all the fundamentals. So let's say you're really good, you're around that 80, you know all the basics, there's no major holes. How should you manage your time? Even if you're elite, you're at an 83, 84, 85, how should you manage your time? Honestly, the answer is the same no matter what. No matter who you are on quant. Great, not so great. What I always want you to do, and I say this in pretty much every quant video we've ever done, both on the GMAT Ninja channel and here, read the question twice, decide what you're going to do before you jump in. And if you don't see a good path forward, if maybe you can't think of anything at all, it's fine to play with the question a little bit, but you don't want to go chasing something you're never going to catch, because whether you're kind of mediocre at this, pretty good at it, elite at it, yeah, I've seen everybody from all across that spectrum of ability get stuck on a question, get stuck on 2 questions. Oh, I just spent 11 minutes on the first 2 questions. Now I've got 34 minutes left for the other 19. This is awful. And then you're going to start making careless errors, and careless errors on the GMAT, it's the apocalypse. So no matter who you are, see that question, start working with it. If you don't see a path forward that's efficient, guess, flag it, move on. Because the last thing you want to have happen, again, no matter where you are on the ability spectrum, the last thing you want is to spend 8 minutes on 1 question or 8 minutes on 2 questions even, and then you're scrambling somewhere else. It's the worst thing ever. Remember, you can go back and edit 3 questions at the end. So if something's going to give you trouble, there's not an efficient solution path that you can execute in a couple of minutes. Make that evaluation early and get out. Really, really important. Bail when you fail, no matter who you are. It's the most important thing you can do for your time management. You don't need any gimmicks. Oh, I'm going to have little whatever. There's all kinds of little gadgets people use. You don't need that stuff. Just bail when you flail. If you're in trouble on a question, guess, flag, move on. Don't get stubborn. And if you're lucky, you might have time at the end. You can fix those. Okay, getting some good questions from the live group. Thank you so much for this, guys. Yeah, I love this question. And I realized I kind of started talking about this already. When should you skip a question after what time? This is a subtly different from what I was saying a moment ago. What I want you to do is when you first start tackling a question, read it twice, think about what you're going to do. That's when you should recognize if you're in trouble within that first minute or so. It depends on the question. On a lot of questions within 30 seconds or 45 seconds, you know whether your solution path is garbage or not, right? A lot of questions, you might need a little bit more time. Maybe it's a minute or a minute and a half. One of the questions we're going to go through today, you might need a minute and a half to process it. That's fine. Some of the really, really bad boys. Anyway, my point is, it might be 30 seconds, a minute, maybe a little bit more for you to know what your path forward is or whether you have a good path forward. That's when you make the decision to guess and move on, because what you don't want to have happen is you get to the 3-minute mark or the 4-minute mark and you go, oh crap, I spent 3 or 4 minutes. It puts you in a bad place psychologically. It can get you very behind, which then puts you in a bad place psychologically and logistically. That's when you scramble. So it's not that you should say after a certain amount of time, I'm watching the clock. So I'm going to watch the clock when I start the question. And when I hit the 3-minute mark, I'm going to bail. That's awful. Then you're watching the clock. You're not doing the math. So don't worry about that exactly. What I want you to do is just get really good at thinking early as you start doing that question. How's my path forward? Do I have a good way of doing this? If not, get out of there. Now, that said, another kind of way I could answer this question, which I think is a wonderful one and a very common one, when you're evaluating, let's say your results on a practice test, you go do a MBA.com practice test or a GMAT club test or whatever. When you're evaluating how you performed and evaluating your time management, what I want you to do is to say, okay, out of these 21 questions, how many of them did I spend more than 3 minutes on? And then I want you to look at those and go, was there a moment when I should have recognized I was in trouble and gotten out of there? Would that time have been better spent somewhere else? So I can say out of one side of my mouth, yeah, anything over 3 minutes is a little suspect. But the way I want you to avoid that problem of spending more than 3 minutes on a question is by recognizing early when you're in trouble. All right. Thank you so much for the question. Keep them coming, guys. You guys are firing all kinds of stuff at me today. I love it. Oh, another really good one. Ayush, thank you so much for this. If time management is an issue, will doing quant first help? Yeah, section order. I don't want to get too deep into that question right now because I think it's there's a lot to it, and I could ramble about that for quite a while. That's a separate video. The answer for this one, Ayush, great question. I think it depends on you. So I'd say there are a lot of different ways to think about section order. I think what they all boil down to, what I think is the best practice, is to figure out what works best for you. So for example, when should you start with quant if quant time management is an issue? Well, is there a reason why you might be better at managing your time if quant comes first? Maybe it's because you're sharper at the beginning. Maybe it's because you kind of walk into the test reminding yourself to let go of questions early, to kind of do the process I'm talking about where you evaluate your path forward before you do too much stuff. And that's when you bail. Maybe you need to remind yourself of that. You have the habit of getting stubborn. And you walk into the exam room going, okay, not going to get stubborn, not going to get stubborn, not going to get stubborn. Maybe it helps you to do that as the very first section if quant is disproportionately the problem. Again, freshness might have something to do with it too. First section, maybe you have more energy. Other than that, though, I don't think there's any fundamental reason why you would want to start quant first. For some of you, you want something else that you would warm up with first, and that's fine. So I wouldn't say that inherently you start with quant if time management's an issue. I'm just saying, yeah, if you feel like that's going to make it better for you because you're fresher or you have kind of your process fresher in your mind, yeah, go ahead and start with it. But it's whatever you're more comfortable with. Okay. Quant verbal with the score. I'm not quite sure, and if you're obviously still watching this, if you can clarify this a little bit, if scoring 85, 83 in quant, around 80-ish verbal and data insights, will the score drop or increase? I'm not sure what you mean there. Is it that the quant score will drop or increase depending on your performance on verbal and data insights? I'm not sure if that's what you're asking. Fundamentally, these sections are independent. If you get something like, if you get an 83 quant, 80 on the other two sections, that's a 625, if that helps at all. I'm not quite sure what you're asking. If it's a question about how the section scores combine to make your composite, there's a really nice calculator on the GMAT Club website that'll get you your score based on the subsection scores. If you're asking something else, please clarify, and I'll hop in. Overall score, okay, yeah. So 83 quant. So the way I like to think of it, the shortcut, there's a very simple linear formula for how section scores combine to create your composite score on the GMAT. Again, you can find that on the GMAT Club website. 80, 80, 80, that's a 605. You add 3 points from any section or any combination of sections, it will add 20 points to your composite. So 83 quant with 80 verbal and data insights, 625. 86 quant with 80 on the other two sections, 645. So for what it's worth, yeah. Okay. All kinds of stuff on here. Thank you so much for all the questions, you guys. I love this. This is supposed to be an Ask Me Anything, so ask me anything. I've got questions teed up, but we can get to them later. Summarize error review in a sentence. I'm not quite sure what you mean by this. Is this just in terms of reviewing the errors you've made on your homework? If that's the case, if that's what you're kind of talking about is, hey, I did a practice test, I did some homework, I made my errors in one sentence, how should I think about it? I want you looking for two things. Let's pretend you're talking about practice tests. I want you looking for two things: careless mistakes, questions that you know you should have had right and you didn't. Those are the most important ones by far because they crush you on an adaptive test. Second, I want you looking for questions over 3 minutes. Should you have walked away from the question sooner to save time to be careful elsewhere? Usually those two things are correlated. More stubbornness, more careless errors on average. Those are the two big things. Yeah, you see questions that are hard for you, by all means, get better at them. But those careless errors are way more consequential in terms of your score. Again, is this a good thing? We can debate. It's just how adaptive tests like the GMAT work. Okay, you guys are awesome. Thank you for this. Okay. I think I've gotten everything so far. Ooh, yeah, good one. Andrew, thank you. Great question. I love this. I feel I'm very nervous in the earlier questions because these are the scores that will determine the score you get, because if I get the easy questions wrong, I won't get a high score. Yeah, this is where, so all of these things, especially if you've watched some of my videos with GMAC, Straight Talk with GMAC, again, you can find on the GMAT Club forum, GMAT Club YouTube channel, GMAT Ninja YouTube channel, GMAC YouTube channel. So trying our very best to kind of get GMAC people, the people who design the test, talking openly about the exam. We talk about this sort of thing a lot. And if you've watched those and some of my other content, the thing that gets really confusing, I think, is you don't want to miss questions that are easy. Fact, on an adaptive test, that's what gets you into trouble. You'll never see the hard ones if you miss the easy ones. But it's not necessarily the case that you need to do great early in the test. I think what you're kind of suggesting here, like if you're in the mindset of, I got to crush the first 5 questions or the first 10 or whatever, I think that's a really dangerous mindset. And there's a really subtle distinction, and it's a little bit hard to get your head around, to be fair, between I want you executing flawlessly on questions that are easy for you and worrying about what happens in the beginning of the test. So here's what I mean. The way adaptive testing works, again, miss easy questions, you'll be less likely to see the harder ones. Don't assume that the questions at the beginning are easy. The way I want you to think about great execution on this exam, really all 3 sections. If a question is easy for you, whatever that might mean, don't miss it. Don't make a mistake. Don't beat yourself. Let the test beat you. These questions are going to get awful if you're taking care of business and getting things right that you know how to do. If your execution's good, the questions are going to get really hard by definition. Time permitting, you're going to see some of those today. I'm going to give you a few that there's one question that if we get to it, man, I've done this question probably 5 or 6 times, and every time I try to do it again, I forget how to do it elegantly. And I end up spending an eternity some of the time. Sometimes I figure out the quick way. Some of these are awful. That's good. When you see a really hard question, shake the GMAT's hand and say, good job, GMAT, you got me. So when I say easy, I mean easy for you, and execute flawlessly on those. Do those come disproportionately at the beginning? Not necessarily. So there's a good bit of randomness in their algorithm, number one. Number two, just because it comes at the beginning doesn't mean that it's easy. I suppose that might be true if you're a really elite scorer. That as you get further along, it takes the algorithm a little while to figure out how good you are and get to the really hard questions. But honestly, for most people, within those first 3 to 5 questions, again, unless you're amazing at this, within those first 3 to 5 questions, you're going to see some that are really tough for you. And I don't want you getting stuck on them. So if the first question, for some reason, just happens to be really hard for you, don't get stuck. Have a good process and go, okay, I'm going to read this. I'm going to see what I can do. I'm going to see if I can find a good way forward. And if I can't find a good way forward, I'm going to go, good job, GMAT. You got me this time. I'm going to guess. I'm going to flag it, and I'm going to move on. And I want you to do that whether it's question number 1, number 2, number 21. It doesn't matter, because what you can't do is spend 8 minutes on it. And I don't want you to make the assumption that all early questions are easy. That is not the case. There's a lot of different factors that go into question selection, and the first few questions aren't necessarily all easy. Certainly the first 5 are not going to be all easy. So don't worry about this too much. There's been myths kind of floating around in GMAT land for as long as I can remember, 20 some odd years. Oh, you got to get the first 5 right, or you got to get the first 10 right. A lot of the time when you take that too far, you spend an eternity on them, and then you're screwed. And then you're just, I mean, you're going to be a jittery mess. You're going to be racing through. That's when the careless errors happen, and you're going to get yourself into more trouble. So consistency is the key. Do the same thing on every question. Number 1, number 5, number 20. Doesn't matter where you are. Read the question twice, plot your path forward. If you don't see a good way forward, guess, mark, move on. If you can come back to it later, great. Don't get stubborn. And again, there's a lot of different things that go into question selection. The first few aren't always easy. Okay. We got more. You guys are doing great. Thank you so much for this. This isn't, again, I had a whole bunch of questions picked out today, but if we just answer your questions today, that's awesome. Yeah, another great one. What are tips to reduce careless mistakes? Yeah, I at the risk of repeating myself, this is really all about approaching questions the same way every single time. Read twice, plot your path forward, check your work. At the end, read the question one more time. We talked about that in a previous episode of this Ask Me Anything series, episode 4, I think. Basics. Yeah, it wasn't about, hey, I'm going to teach you basic algebra. It was about how to have a good process. If you go to the GMAT Ninja channel, our video, I think it's called something like Video 0 in our Quant series, How to Approach GMAT Quant. It's all about process. Job number 1, whether you're starting at the very, very beginning or you have really great math skills, but you don't like how you're scoring, is do the same thing every single time. Good execution. I care about execution more than I care about your math skills. Fun story, I had a student years ago. I'll try to tell this pretty quickly because we're already 20 minutes in. Terrified of math. She was in her 20s. She hadn't taken math since she was 15, went to kind of a hippie school in San Francisco, California, and was like, yeah, I haven't done a math class in 10 years. I'm terrified of math. I'd give her a problem and she'd kind of whine like a puppy. She'd be like, ah. She'd kind of do this. Really smart, really, really smart lady, but had this math phobia. And her skills were really shaky. Okay, so we worked on her skills for a while, kind of getting to sort of strong fundamentals, algebra, arithmetic, percentages, all that stuff. Nothing super advanced. Did a practice test, got, I don't know, 30, different scale back then, but got a 20th percentile. It was a really terrible score. But she got really stubborn. Like she spent like 6 minutes on a bunch of different questions, missed a bunch of questions where I was like, I know you know how to do that. And then I pointed that out to her. I said, hey, look at all these questions where you spent more than 3 minutes. Look at all these easy questions you missed that I know you know how to do. And I want you to skip the ones that are hard for you. Just guess, move on. She's like, wait, I can skip some of them? I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, you have to mark them, but you mark it, you flag it, and you go. And spend your time on the ones you know how to do. She's like, really? I can just do the ones I know how to do? I was like, that's what you should do. And just don't mess up on the ones that you know how to do. Read it carefully. Don't misread. Don't make bad errors. She ended up getting a 710 on the test and went off to her first choice school. She was never that good at math. We got her to decent, not great. So long-winded way of saying, it all flows from having a really strong systematic process. And again, I'm going to yell about that a lot in other videos. Again, check out video 0 from the Quant series, How to Approach Quant on the GMAT Ninja channel. That's where it's kind of the most distilled version of it. And if you do that and focus just on your process, the time management kind of takes care of itself because you're not getting stuck on questions. Don't think about the time, put it out of your head. Focus on what you can control. Read the question twice, plot your path, do the math, check your work, read it again. You do that, and you're really good about bailing when you're stuck. Time management will not be a problem. Yeah, it's going to feel a little time pressured, but you're not going to have a major time management problem if you're really systematic in your approach. So good time management, good psychology comes from a good approach. Okay, great question. Yeah, this is, thank you so much. Thank you so much, you guys, for keeping the questions coming. This is fun. Because last couple of videos in this series, I felt like I was just kind of lecturing at you, and I love the interaction. So keep it coming, you guys. After giving the mocks, figured the first 2 questions are medium to hard. A couple thoughts on this. One thought is, yeah, broadly, I'd say you're barking up the right tree. I mean, typically those first few questions, on average, will be kind of mid-level, maybe moderately difficult. They're not going to be the hardest. They're not going to be the easiest. That's kind of true. There's going to be variety within those first 3 to 5 questions for sure. But here's what I would say to this, and I'm being a little unfair because it's a short little comment on a live stream. But when I have students who kind of keep asking about this sort of thing, I go, hey, I'll give you the answer to sort of what you're asking about how the test works. But then I'll say, I don't want you worrying about it, because if you really want to execute well, where should your brain power be for those 45 minutes? What should you be thinking about? You should be thinking about the question in front of you. You should be thinking about how to read it right, find the best, most efficient solution path, executing on that solution path, making sure you didn't make a goofy error, and moving on to the next one, letting go if it was too hard for you. That's what you should be focused on for every single second of those 45 minutes. If you're worrying about what the algorithm's doing, that's when bad things happen. So yeah, broadly correct. They're going to start mostly kind of mid-level, maybe medium to slightly harder, on average, with plenty of variety within those first few questions. But I don't want you worrying about it. I don't want you thinking about it when you're doing a practice test, when you're doing your homework, when you're doing the actual test. Don't worry about what the algorithm is doing. It can only cause bad things. Don't try to look into the test. It's really hard to tell what's easy, medium, hard. I could give you a question. I might do that today. Give you a question and you'll think, oh, that's easy. And it's not. Looks can be very, very deceiving. Don't worry about what the test is doing. Don't try to figure out what's easy, medium, and hard. Your job is to focus on the task at hand. Do you know how to do the question? Yes or no? If the answer is no, get out. If the answer is yes, do it systematically, carefully, efficiently. All right, great question. And I realized I kind of took that question for a walk. It wasn't totally your intent there, but whoa, you guys, this is awesome. This is wild. Source plateau. Okay, yeah, another good question, Aish. When you get stuck with a question, how should you feel? Stuck with a question, how would you deal with it on the second attempt? Looking for common sense to prevail. I assume, Aish, you're talking about if, let's say, on a mock test or your homework, you really struggle on a question, then you come back and look at it afterwards. Actually, let me interpret your question 2 different ways, because I think answering both might be useful for somebody. On the actual test, if you do it one way, and you're taking the actual GMAT exam, you do it one way, it doesn't work, don't reattempt it. That's when you're going to be stuck for 8 minutes. So I assume you're talking about on your homework, when you get stuck and then you try it again later. You're trying to find you're trying to look at it from a different angle. So this sort of interpretation of your question, I think, is very relevant for any of you who are elite scorers or striving to be. So let's say that you miss a question on a mock exam on your homework and you move on. And then when you're reviewing your exam, let's say, you go and look at that question again. I want you to try to look at it from a different angle. Flexibility is the most important, most valuable thing. Maybe not the most, one of the most valuable things as you get to those really hard questions. Can you think about it flexibly, look at it from different angles? So as you're reviewing questions you missed, I want you to do that. Try it from a different angle. See if you can see something different. Really push your brain to think of it differently. That's just training your brain in a good way. Okay. This looks like an interesting one too. So how to know the root cause of score plateaus? Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. 3 minutes per question, 45-minute timer for all questions. Well, 21 questions, 3 minutes per, that's 63 minutes. So that might be part of the problem. Things I would look at here, I mean, obviously, if you see a certain pattern to your mistakes in terms of, hey, I keep missing, I don't know, rates questions, sure, that's pretty easy to diagnose. If there's a certain question type that's giving you trouble, yeah, obviously pay attention to that. More likely, the things that I think are broader that you want to look at is, okay, well, why are you running out of time? Is it because you're spending too much time on individual questions? Is that getting you into trouble? In which case, you need to learn to let go. Is it that every single question, even an easy question, you're spending 2.5 minutes on one that's easy for you, and 3.5 minutes on a question that's harder for you, and it's kind of an across the board slowness? That's a different problem. It might be that as you're practicing, there's not enough energy. We can do anything in our lives with full energy or kind of half energy or kind of, and sometimes people kind of start moving slowly through tests and they're just in that habit. It could be something like that. It could be that you always pick inefficient paths. You're not thinking about the best way forward. Could be your basics are shaky, any number of things if you're slow across the board. But first thing I would look at if you're struggling to get through the 45 minutes, yeah, is it driven by a 4-minute question, a 6-minute question, an 8-minute question? Well, then that's the problem. Learn to let go of those. Yeah, me too, Jeffrey. I appreciate that. We will get to it. Since we've cast this video as Ask Me Anything, I want to honor all these questions. So we will get to it. And it's crazy that we're half an hour in, but I appreciate the questions, you guys. And I want to honor that this is a Ask Me Anything. So I'm going to answer all these as best I can. All right. All right. Thank you so much for donating, you guys. How should I approach multi-source reasoning questions? Pace gets slow on those questions. Guess what? We did a video on multi-source reasoning questions, so check that out. It was number 1 or number 2 in the series where we got into multi-source reasoning. I don't think I did an actual example with you guys. But the bottom line here is get the lay of the land on your data insights to get to sort of see what's going on before you jump into the details. So check out that video in this Ask Me Anything series. And if you want more, we've done plenty of other multi-source reasoning videos here at GMAT Club and over at GMAT Ninja as well. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to pause on some of these questions. I think some of these are getting a little redundant. I'm struggling to understand a few of them. Let's do a question or two, because I've just been yapping here for 31 minutes, and I'm tired of my voice. So let's do a question, you guys. Is this one I want to do? Is this starting one? You know what? I'm going to start you here. Okay. I'm going to preface this before I throw it on the screen. My goal in choosing questions for this session, and I'm not going to get to all of them, unfortunately, is I wanted to pick questions that cross boundaries. And it could be a couple different sort of types of math. So this one, unless I change my mind in the next 30 seconds, combination of probability and number properties. And sometimes it's really hard for our brains to kind of toggle back and forth between those things. Sometimes it's algebra and logic. Sometimes it's logic and something else, number properties or whatever. So often on the very hardest questions, it's not so much the math gets harder, it's challenging your brain to go back and forth between different concepts, different systems, different topics. So with that, go ahead and tackle this one, guys, and then we'll come back to some of the general questions afterwards. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to figure out how to get that logo out of the way. And I don't know if it'll be on there for people not watching it live. For the live group, I don't know what else to do because I can't get the logo off the screen. That is beyond my pay grade. So what this says is if an integer n is to be chosen at random from the integers 1 to 96, inclusive, what is the probability that this thing will be divisible by 8? So you're not missing a lot there. So it's integers 1 to 96, inclusive. We're going to choose n at random. What's the probability that that product will be divisible by 8? So sorry for the technical glitch, guys. I will see if I can get that figured out. There you go. Sorry about that, guys. And folks watching live, you know the drill. Love to see what your answers are. If you're stuck, please let us know that too. Live group, you guys are quiet. If you're stuck or cursing at this question, please toss that into the comments too. Maybe 20 more seconds. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I'm seeing some folks just waving the white flag, and I totally respect that. Thank you. Not that it's fun. I'm sorry you're going through it, but I appreciate the honesty. Okay. So we've got the integers 1 through 96. We're going to choose one at random, and then we want to know the probability that this thing is divisible by 8. And look, this is tough, guys. I'm picking ones that are really hard for people, and again, that kind of span different kinds of parts of your brain, parts of the test. Little number properties, little probability. I think we would look at this and think, oh, it's probability. I might argue that the heart of it is more number properties. You got to know a little probability, but you got to really kind of dial into some logic on the divisibility to get this. And it is tough. And yeah, I'm seeing, yeah. I mean, I'm picking on the rarities, the hard stuff. This is an official question. It's an older one. But again, they can take, I think part of, again, for this video, the question of, well, how do I get from an 80 to something like an 85 or beyond? Yeah, at the very, very high level, GMAT is really artful at taking different things and combining them in new and crazy ways. So a lot of these questions are kind of one-offs. Well, how often do you see probability mixed with number properties? Occasionally. But you can pick any 2 or 3 different genres of question, and yeah, they can combine them and create something that's creative and nasty, and you're not going to see anything exactly like this again, probably, maybe. Anyway, okay. So the nice thing is, I mean, the first thing I noticed is, well, at least 96 is already a multiple of 8, so I don't have to worry about anything kooky there. That's kind of cool. My first thought, first time I saw this question a 500 million years ago, when dinosaurs roamed the earth and the official guide was on its 11th edition or something, was, well, can I play with odd and even? Because if it's divisible by 8, this thing has to be even. Has to have more than one multiple of 2 in there, but has to be even. Okay, well, what if I start there and just kind of start thinking about it? So if it's, I don't know, odd, even, odd, even, that's one way. These are consecutive integers. Okay, well, that could be a multiple of 8. But then I start kind of hurting my brain a little bit. I'm like, that's a multiple of 2, and that's a multiple of 4, but this could be a multiple of 8, and then that won't be, and my brain hurts. I'm going to pause there for a second, just kind of leave that. The other possibility is odd, even, odd. And you know what's kind of cool is I can get my head around this one intuitively and go, well, wait a minute. Okay, so this is going to be a multiple of 8. This thing will be divisible by 8 only if, so divisibly divisible by 8 if this thing, n plus 1, is divisible by 8. Okay, well, what's the probability that happens? Just 1 out of 8, right? So n plus 1, what's the chances that I pick a random number out of those 96 numbers, and n plus 1 happens to be a multiple of 8? Well, 1 out of 8, right? Okay. Well, that's something. So 1 out of 8 chance that the middle number is a multiple of 8, and the other 2 are odd. Cool. The fun part, coming back to this. This is where it's nothing technical. It's not really about how much you've studied number properties or how much you've studied probability or anything. It's really just kind of tapping into that logic, tapping into that flexibility and going, okay, what tools do I have? How can I think about this? Is there a formula I know that's going to help me? Not here. Maybe you have one, I don't. But let me just think about this. I've got two, what are these two? These are two consecutive even numbers, right? So, and again, there's an odd in between in this case, but that's not going to have any bearing on whether this product is divisible by 8. But let's think about these guys. And by the way, for what it's worth, what's the probability that you're going to get even, odd, even? What's that probability? Well, it's a half, right? What's the probability that n is even? It's a half. Okay, now the question is this a multiple of 8? Okay, so I'm going to start playing with these evens a little bit to get my head around it. And by the way, this is exactly how I approached it the first time I saw it. So let me just play with numbers, consecutive evens. Well, again, we're multiplying these guys together. What if my two evens are 2 and 4? Is the product divisible by 8? Yep. What if it's 4 and 6? Divisible by 8? Yep. What if it's 6 and 8? Well, yeah, of course it is in that case. 8 and 10? Yeah. 10 and 12? Yeah. Now, you might say, well, but how do I know if I've tried enough cases? Fair objection. So this is where you want to think, well, why is this always giving me multiple of 8? Why is that happening every single time? Well, when you think about it, what does it mean to be a multiple of 8? It means that the prime factors of that thing, and again, I'm not going to teach you basic number properties right now, but if this thing is divisible by 8, it means that the factors in it, there's a 2 times 2 times 2 somewhere in that product. So if this first even might only have 1 2, this one's going to have 2. This is divisible by 2, this is divisible by 4. If this one's divisible by 4, this will be divisible by 2. And it's always going to be that way. Every other even number will be divisible by 4, meaning it's got at least 2 2's in the prime factor, among its prime factors. So you're always going to have one of them with 1 2, one of them with at least 2 2's. You always have at least 3 2's when you multiply these together. So this, even, odd, even, always divisible by 8. What's the probability it happens? Half. 1/2 plus 1/8, 5/8. Welcome to the hard stuff, guys. Okay, that was fun. And all of you guys watching live, really appreciate the kind of the banter that's going on in there, because yeah, these are rough. All sorts of different ways to solve it. You can approach, again, GMAT, lots of different ways to approach a question. That's part of how these are written. There are other ways to solve this. I find this one to be the most kind of intuitive and natural. But as you get to the hard stuff, it's asking you to kind of use different parts of your brain. All right, only about 15, 16 minutes left here in this session. I'm going to answer a couple more of the general questions we had earlier. I wanted to throw an example at you to kind of stop the monologuing. And if you guys have more general questions, fire them at me. I want to ask the basic questions. Many times you missed the 21st, the very last question of the section. Is it okay to blind guess and then solve? I think what you're referring to here is that you don't want time to expire without giving an answer to the question. This version of the GMAT, 2026 and beyond version, if you omit a question, they really hurt you. It costs you typically 3 or 4 points on your section score. So about 20 points on your composite for every question you failed to answer at the end of the section. You don't want that to happen. So let's say that you get to your last question on a section, any section, and you've got 1 minute left, and it's quant, and you're like, I might be able to do this in 1 minute, but you don't want time to expire without having an answer. Put an answer in there. Just pick something. Do your best to solve it, and then just confirm it at the end. So yeah, you don't want to, bottom line here, do not omit that last question. Make sure you have an answer in there. It is fine to guess and then go back and try to solve it. And if you run out of time, you run out of time. At least there's an answer there, because they hammer you for not answering that last question at all. It's really annoying, but that's how it is. Okay. All right, there's one more general question I wanted to get to. Yeah, and coming back to this, I think it's relevant. I realize that this video is supposed to be about just advanced quant, and I think the situation we see a lot of our students in, partly because climbing up the score scale in quant is so brutally hard now for some people, for most people. It's just tough. It's just how the test is scaled. Once you get to an 80, it is really, really slow going for most people beyond that. Kind of this general question, and I'm going to answer this more broadly than you're asking it. So well, let me answer your specific question. Hey, if your quant dropped, okay, what happened there? Did you forget math? I doubt it. Something probably happened with your process. You've gotten a little sloppy and rusty. So really pay attention again to those careless errors, your time management for you in this case. So yeah, a little bit more broadly, I don't recommend binging. So try to keep your studying balanced. If you're trying to get better at all 3 sections, do a little bit of all 3 sections. If quant you think is your weakest, but not your only weakness, maybe you spend, I don't know, half your time on quant and half on the other 2. But I think it's a pretty bad study mistake to just do, I'm going to do verbal for 3 months and that's it, and then come back to quant. You'll forget stuff. I think it's better to keep it fresh, do a little bit of everything mixed together for what it's worth. More broadly on scoring, which is why I picked this question out, because I think it's a good one on a bunch of levels. Again, when you think about that composite score, it doesn't really matter where your points come from. So if you gain 3 points on any section or combination of them, that adds 20 points to your composite. So obviously in this case, yeah, you've backslid on quant. Keep your studying balance so that doesn't happen. Obviously you're capable of a higher score on quant, go get it. But more broadly, if you're kind of looking at your scores and going, I've hit a ceiling, quant, I'm at an 83 and I'm kind of stuck. And I'm at 80s on the other 2, but I really want a 665. The way to think about it is, where can I get points? Doesn't really matter where you get the points in terms of your composite. 2 points on all 3 sections, fine. 6 points on 1 section, fine. Get points wherever it's the most efficient for you, bottom line. Okay. Another good question. I feel like this has come up in a couple of these videos lately. I like that you're asking the question. I don't love the answer to the question. The honest answer to the question is, unfortunately, yes. Because section scores tend to be correlated, part of how GMAT makes the test a little bit more efficient is, let's say you do verbal first, and let's say you crush verbal and you get a perfect score, the next section is going to be a little bit harder. So yeah, the starting point of each section is affected a little bit by your performance on previous sections, a little bit. Here's the key though. I really don't want you thinking about it for a bunch of reasons. Number one, it has essentially 0 impact on your end score. It makes the test a little bit more efficient in targeting questions to you in the beginning, but it's going to wash out in your final score. Your quant score is going to be based on your quant ability, and that's it. They just get you there a little bit more efficiently if they can target that first question a little bit better. So the honest answer to your question is, yeah, performance on previous sections does matter for your starting point. And statistically, and again, there's academic studies on this. I've talked about this at length with the test creators, and it has almost no effect in the long run. So honest answer, yes, it does affect those first few questions. Does it affect anything beyond that? Really, it doesn't. Your performance is going to dictate that score in the end, period, no matter where it starts. So I don't want you worrying about this. I think section order is best determined by how you're comfortable. Me personally, verbal is the thing I have the hardest time concentrating on. I don't want to do verbal when I'm fatigued. Personally, I would do it first. Some of you might say, hey, I want to do verbal once I'm warmed up. I'm going to warm up with quant because I like that or whatever. And then do verbal later once I'm warm, whatever. But I want you to think about your performance, your comfort, your sharpness. That's what matters. This whole business of the first question being affected by previous sections really shouldn't play any role in your decision making. And I feel really, really strongly about that, and backed by tons of data that I've seen from GMAT. Okay. Yeah, these are great, you guys. And I feel bad because I've picked out some questions that we're not going to get to today. So would you suggest continuing with the question when you've figured out the way, but it's taking a little longer than average? The exact way you phrased this question, and then I'll take your question for a walk to make it more general for people. A little bit more time than average, cool, cool. Some questions are going to take you a little bit more than average, some a little bit less, cool, no problem. So if you have a good solution path, you know you can do it. It might take you 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes and 45, and you know you can do it and do it well, do it and do it well, no problem. If it's a lot more, that's when you should recognize it early. My path is going to be slow, tedious, painful, awful. Flag it, guess, move on. Okay. Ooh, you guys are crushing it today, and I'm not saying that to be nice. I love these questions. So this might be a good moment for me to say, next session, I think last session of the series, for now at least, episode number 6, reading comprehension. Bring all your questions. If you have questions that you know you want to ask that are general questions about reading comp, verbal, time management, any of that, you can see in the description, there's a link to the forum. Ask me anything thread. Ask me there so I can prep for your question, or just show up and fire it at me, because I love this. This is way more fun than me just kind of picking questions that I think you'll like. Tell me what you guys want to know. So thank you so much, everybody, for these questions. Does time management affect the scores too? Only indirectly. Manage your time badly, miss easy questions, bad. How much time you spend on questions has absolutely nothing to do with your score. The question is right or wrong in terms of the scoring, and that's it. RC series, yep, next week, live, right here on Friday. Reading comp, ask me anything. So please ask me anything. We might have a longer reading comp series coming as well. We also have reading comp series already on this channel from a few years back and over on the GMAT Ninja channel. How often do you read the question statement if you were unable to figure out the way ahead? Yeah, good question, Ayush. So how often do you read the question? So let's say you read the question, you go, how many times should you read it before you just walk away? Twice is probably good. And if you're totally lost, then maybe it's time to move on. I think there are questions sometimes where I read them twice and go, I think I got it. And one more read, I'm gonna get it. Fine, that's no problem. But I think it's just developing the self-awareness as you practice to know when you're really screwed and move on if you are. Okay. All right, 8 minutes left. We're losing people because I'm not doing enough questions. Let me give you one more. And yeah, we have an old series here on GMAT Club, very comprehensive series at GMAT Ninja channel. We did a critical reasoning aspect. Did we? Maybe we didn't. I can't remember. It's blacked out blur. Plenty of critical reasoning here on the GMAT Ninja channel. We are planning a full live series at some point this year. Details TBD, but keep an eye on the forum. Follow me on the forum, and we will let you know when that's coming. All right. I'm going to give you one more, and we'll see if we can get through it in 7 minutes. No, that's not how we do it. There we go. Not my favorite of the ones I picked out, but I think it's appropriate in the amount of time we have left. Go ahead and take a couple minutes, guys. If you're watching it live, let me know as soon as you're stuck. As soon as you have an answer, you should have some. Most of you will have something quickly. So have at it. All right, guys. Again, live group, thank you so much for all the participation. It's been awesome, awesome, awesome. A lot of fun. Please come join us next week. Last live video in the series, reading comp. So thank you again, everybody, for keeping it lively today. All right, I'm going to go through this one pretty quickly just because time. I got about 4 minutes left. I want to keep this under an hour. What are hard GMAT questions about? So this is a question that was missed by pretty close to half of people who attempted it on GMAT Club. It's an official question. So rated difficult by definition because you guys miss it. Is it about how much math you know? Nope, not at all, right? You guys know how to do this. The math's not the thing. It's the thinking. It's the process. And that's what gets you. And it's the flexibility because, hey, I'm trying to minimize something. All right, I'm going to minimize this. Okay, well, this is the smallest number in there, right? -10, it's the smallest one. I'm going to get 20 of those. And that's my answer. No, this is a gigantic positive number. That can't be it. So then I'm going to think, well, wait, there's a 0 in there. So that could be my answer. And you see how if you're going a little too fast and you're not being systematic, and you're not being flexible, that's where you get into trouble. So yeah, could this be a 0? You bet it could be a 0. But is that the least value? You need to kind of turn this inside out, think a little bit. One of my former students, this guy with a great British accent, would say, you know, I was trying to do the math. And then I said to myself, turn on your human brain. Human brain meaning just logic, just intuition. How do we make this really, really small? I want it to be negative. It's got to be negative. There's a bunch of negative numbers here. So how do I make it negative? Well, I want a negative with the largest possible number. So I want a negative in front of the largest possible number. What might that look like? Well, what if I get this, for example, because that's the number itself, the biggest absolute value you can get is this. But what if I could somehow get that negative outside of there? Well, that's going to maximize it, right? Well, how do I do that? Well, I just take one negative number. There's lots of ways to do it, but one is to take one negative number. What if it's just one of the negative 10s and then a whole bunch of these positive 10s? That's it. Welcome to the GMAT. This is rated a hard question. It doesn't look hard, I don't think. A lot of you probably looked at it and go, this is easy. I can see people dropping off the live stream going, it's easy. Welcome to the GMAT. It's about flexibility in your thinking at the highest level. Very, very few of the hardest questions are that far beyond math, or really very few of them are mathematically beyond what you see in mid-level questions. They're not layering harder, more advanced math. They're just sticking in a little layer of logic or a few layers of logic that might get you. So fight for flexibility, fight for good process, fight for good execution. Now, these sessions are not every Friday, but we are doing one next Friday. And then we'll work on whatever comes next for this series. You will see me a lot here on Fridays is the bottom line. Follow us on the forum, hit that subscribe button, please. Hit that like button if you like this video. And once again, people watching live, really appreciate you. Super grateful. Thank you so much. Everybody, thanks for joining us and have fun studying. And just in case you missed it, answer is E. Thank you, everybody.